Have you ever heard of a saint who was also considered one of the most powerful sorcerers in history? The life of Saint Cyprian is marked by a unique and enigmatic journey that traverses the realms of the occult and Christian faith. From a feared sorcerer to a respected bishop, his story is full of mysteries and twists. But what led a practitioner of black magic to abandon everything and embrace Christianity? And why is his name still so closely associated with mystical rituals, even centuries after his death? Get ready to dive into a fascinating journey where magic and faith meet, and discover the secrets behind the life of Saint Cyprian. Chapter 1. Childhood and Introduction to the Occult. Cyprian was born in Antioch around the year 250 into a wealthy family with strong pagan traditions. From a young age, he was surrounded by esoteric beliefs and mystical rituals, which deeply shaped his worldview. His parents, noticing his interest in the supernatural, encouraged Cyprian to study occult sciences and astrology, seeking knowledge that went beyond human understanding. From early on, he was drawn to the mysteries of the universe and the idea that invisible forces could be manipulated to gain power. As the years passed, Cyprian delved deeper into the study of black magic, traveling to different regions in search of masters who could refine his skills. Among his mentors was the enigmatic witch Evora, famous for her practices of necromancy and rituals of spirit invocation. Under her guidance, Cyprian learned to summon entities, brew potions, and perform complex rituals that promised power and influence. This knowledge made him a feared and respected figure among those seeking solutions to ear. One of the most interesting aspects of Cyprian's training was his ability to unite different occult traditions, creating a unique style of sorcery. He didn't just follow his master's teachings, he adapted and improved rituals, blending elements from various esoteric cultures. This made him an unparalleled sorcerer with a reputation that spread across different regions. His services were sought by those who desired revenge, wealth, or protection against enemies, but Cyprian always demanded a high. Despite his success as a sorcerer, Cyprian never stopped feeling a deep unease. He knew that there were forces far greater than those he could control. In his relentless pursuit of power, he encountered limits that even his most complex rituals couldn't overcome. It was as if a mysterious force, one he couldn't identify, resisted his attempts at manipulation. This sense of powerlessness before the unknown led him to question whether there might be something beyond magic. These questions became even more pressing when he met Justina, a young Christian woman who became a turning point in his life. Fascinated by her beauty and virtue, Cyprian tried to win her love through spells and enchantments, but none of them worked. Justina seemed to be surrounded by a protection that Cyprian had never encountered before. This left him intrigued and awakened in him a desire to understand the origin of this force that resisted his magic. This clash between the forces of the occult and the spiritual resistance of Justina marked the beginning of a transformation that no one could have predicted. Cyprian was facing a mystery much greater than all the secrets he had discovered until then, and what he would find on his quest for answers would change the course of his life forever. Chapter 2. The Magical Confrontation and Cyprian's Conversion. Cyprian was determined to win over Justina, and for that he used every spell he knew. He tried summoning demons, casting curses, and using complex enchantments to bend her will. But to his surprise, none of these rituals had any effect on the young Christian. Justina prayed fervently, and whenever she felt the negative influences of Cyprian's magic, she made the sign of the cross and called upon the name of Jesus. The power of her faith proved stronger than any enchantment Cyprian could perform. This failure left Cyprian shaken and restless. How could a simple Christian woman, with her prayers and beliefs, overcome a sorcerer of such skill? The answers he once sought in ancient spellbooks began to seem inadequate. For the first time, he felt small before a force he couldn't control: the power of faith. This experience began to undermine his certainties, leading him to rethink his entire journey up to that point. The shock of Cyprian at the power of Justina's prayer was so profound that he even invoked his spiritual mentor, trying to understand the origin of this resistance. But the answer he found was vague and disturbing. It was as if the entities he communicated with did not even want to approach the protection surrounding Justina. It was then that a new idea began to take shape in his mind. Perhaps there was something true in the words that Christians preached, something that made them invincible against darkness. Over time, Cyprian began to study Christianity in secret, wanting to better understand the faith that seemed so powerful. He began to listen attentively to the sermons of Justina and other Christians, observing how they spoke of a God who was not manipulated by rituals, but who offered protection and salvation to those who believed in him. The words of the scriptures, so different from the ancient grimoires he possessed, began to touch his heart. It was as if a new light shone in his life, dispelling the shadows of his former existence. The decision to abandon his life as a sorcerer was not easy. Cyprian had built a reputation and a position of respect in the world of the occult, and leaving all that behind meant losing power and prestige. He knew that his conversion to Christianity would be seen as a betrayal by many of his former followers and masters. But the curiosity that had arisen in his heart was stronger than fear. Cyprian felt that he needed to know this force that had defeated him. Finally, he sought out Justina and confessed that he wanted to abandon his life of magic and dedicate himself to the Christian faith. Justina, with her compassion and patience, helped him understand the teachings of Christ and prepare his heart for conversion. In a symbolic act of renunciation, Cyprian destroyed his grimoires and burned the instruments he used in his rituals. This act was like a purification, a definitive break with the dark past he had left behind. Cyprian's conversion was a true turning point in his life, but also a powerful sign to many who knew him. His radical change of direction inspired others to seek the Christian faith, and he became an example of how even those most deeply entrenched in darkness could find the light. The story of Cyprian, once marked by mystery and fear, was now being written with new words, those of redemption and forgiveness. Chapter 3. Cyprian's life as a bishop and the challenge of persecutions. After his conversion, Cyprian was baptized and began a new journey, now as a fervent Christian. Over time, he stood out for his dedication to the faith and to the study of the scriptures, being chosen as the Bishop of Carthage. His appointment as bishop came as a surprise to many, especially those who knew his previous life as a practitioner of magic. But Cyprian quickly demonstrated that his zeal for the Christian faith was genuine, leading the Christian community during a time marked by great challenges and persecutions. One of Cyprian's main concerns was the unity of the Church in times of great crisis. During the reign of Emperor Decius, Christians faced a severe wave of persecution, being forced to choose between renouncing their faith or facing torture and death. Many succumbed to fear, but Cyprian remained steadfast, encouraging the faithful to remain resilient even in the face of oppression. He believed that martyrdom was not a defeat, but a spiritual victory, an opportunity to bear witness to the truth of the gospel. Cyprian also faced internal challenges within the church. During the persecutions, divisions arose between those who resisted and those who gave in to the pressures of the empire. Many Christians who had denied the faith sought reconciliation, and there was intense debate over how to welcome them back into the community. Cyprian, always balanced and merciful, argued that these repentant Christians should be welcomed, but only after a period of penance. This stance, which sought a balance between justice and mercy, was essential for strengthening the unity of the Church during one of its most turbulent periods. Cyprian's legacy as a Christian leader and bishop was also marked by his numerous letters and writings. In his pastoral letters, he offered spiritual advice, guided on liturgical matters, and defended the need for a united church that could withstand the adversities imposed by the Roman Empire. His role as a spokesperson and defender of the faith was recognized by many church leaders, including Pope Cornelius, with whom he maintained an active correspondence. Cyprian firmly believed that the unity of Christians was the greatest weapon against the forces trying to destroy them. In the midst of this life dedicated to faith, Cyprian never forgot his own story. He knew that his experience as a practitioner of magic and his miraculous conversion had a special purpose. In his speeches, he often mentioned his transformation, using it as a testimony that no one is beyond the reach of God's grace. His life as a bishop was not only one of leadership, but also of example, showing that redemption is possible for all, even for those who, like him, once walked in the shadows. And it was this posture of faith and leadership that made Cyprian one of the main pillars of the church in North Africa. His actions and words echoed among the faithful, who saw in him not only a leader, but a man who knew the depths of darkness and, at the same time, the brilliance of light. But the challenges would not end so quickly. The persecution of Christians continued, and the trials he would face in the last years of his life would be even more intense. Chapter 4. The Final Confrontation and the Martyrdom of Cyprian. In the final years of his life, Cyprian faced one of the most turbulent periods in the history of the Church. The persecutions against Christians, ordered by Emperor Valerian, intensified, and leaders like Cyprian became primary targets for their role in keeping the faith alive among Christ's followers. Knowing the risks he faced, Cyprian chose to remain alongside his flock, refusing to flee and abandon the faithful of Carthage. He believed that his public witness could inspire courage in such a... In 257 AD, Cyprian was captured by the Roman authorities and subjected to trial for refusing to worship the empire's gods. During the interrogation, he stood firm in his defense of the Christian faith, stating that he could not renounce the one true God in exchange for pagan idols. The Roman governor tried to persuade him to change his stance, offering him a chance to escape the death penalty, but Cyprian remained steadfast. His words of confidence in the promise of eternal life echoed in the courtroom, and he knew his fate was sealed. After being sentenced to death, Cyprian was led outside the city of Carthage to an open area where his execution would take place. The chosen location was a field known as Campus Sexti, an area that allowed the crowd to watch closely what would happen. Among the crowd that followed him were Christians who admired his courage, but also pagans curious to see the execution of such a respected man. In his final moments, Cyprian knelt in prayer, asking God to strengthen the persecuted Christians and forgive those who condemned him. This act of mercy reflected the essence of his conversion and the strength of his testimony. Cyprian's martyrdom occurred by beheading. On his knees and with serenity, he removed his garments and handed them to his attendants, showing calm and peace with his fate. The executioner, visibly nervous in the face of the bishop's serenity, hesitated before carrying out the execution. Cyprian, noticing his hesitation, encouraged him to fulfill the order, saying that he did not fear death. He then blindfolded his own eyes, waiting for the final blow. With a single stroke of the sword, his head was severed from his body, and thus Cyprian gave up his soul. Cyprian's last words, "Thanks be to God," were spoken with serenity and conviction, and many of those present witnessed his expression of peace until the very end. For the Christians who watched, his death was not a sign of defeat, but a testimony of courage and unbreakable faith. The blood of Cyprian, spilled on that soil, became a symbol of an unwavering commitment to Christ. Cyprian's martyrdom left a profound mark on the Christian community, which came to venerate him as a martyr who did not hesitate to give his life for the truth. Cyprian's execution was not just an isolated event, but rather a symbol of resistance against the empire's attempts to destroy the Christian faith. His example was an inspiration for many other Christians who would face the same fate in the name of their beliefs. The story of his execution quickly spread, further reinforcing his importance as one of the defenders of the faith in times of adversity. And thus, the figure of Cyprian became remembered not only as a spiritual leader, but as a martyr who sealed his conversion with his own blood. After his death, the memory of Cyprian continued to live on in the church and among Christians. His life, marked by transformation and a testimony of faith, became an example that the power of God is greater than any human force or magic. Even centuries later, his story inspires the faithful in search of a strong faith and spiritual protection, showing that, like him, everyone has the chance to be reborn and find a path to the light. And for those who want to learn more about stories of saints like Cyprian, we recommend the ebook 50 Saints, Stories and Prayers for Divine Intervention, available in our store, which features inspiring accounts and powerful prayers for everyday life. The story of Saint Cyprian shows us that even those who lived deep in the world of darkness can find the light. His journey, marked by the transition from magic to faith, invites us to reflect on the transforming power of grace and the strength of conversion. And even with all the mysteries that still surround his figure, he remains an example of how the search for truth can change even the most skeptical. If you enjoyed this story and want to learn about other inspiring journeys of saints, be sure to watch the next video appearing on your screen, and consider becoming a channel member for access to exclusive content that will deepen your faith and spirituality even more. Until next time, and may Saint Cyprian intercede for us.